Welcome, design students. In this video we're going to make a clock, and we're going to learn some advanced techniques using insert edge loop, as we've already used before, advanced Arnold surface materials, adding textures to polygons, and we're going to use a new thing called UVW mapping that we haven't used yet. So let's get started. We're going to start by creating a cylinder. And we're going to get the scale tool, and let's scale this down a bit, and then scale it out. Maybe we'll scale it up a little bit more. Now I'm going to start by deleting some polygons here that we don't need, or some faces. Let's rotate around so we see the side of this thing, and we're going to select all the bottom polygons, but instead of clicking them like this one at a time, what we're going to do is going to select and then deselect. So let's drag a selection, a marquee selection like so, to select all the bottom polygons and all the side ones. Then I want you to hold down Control and drag down from the top and just touch the sides, and that deselects the sides, leaving the bottom selected, and then we can just push delete on the keyboard. And now let's create the clock face by doing the same thing. We're going to drag a marquee selection to select everything like so, and then we're going to hold down Control and deselect the side polygons so that we just have the top ones selected. Now let's inset these polygons by using the scale tool. Get the scale tool, hold down Shift, and then drag in the X and Z direction so we can inset a place for the clock face like so. And now we're going to extrude the clock face inward by switching to the Move tool. I'm going to use W on my keyboard and hold down Shift and extrude this down. So now our clock face is going to be in here, and if it's too deep you can just move it up and down. You don't have to hold down Shift anymore to do that. And now let's make the clock body rounded. So let's switch to vertex mode and very gently grab these vertices here around the bottom. Make sure you don't grab the ones on the clock face. And then use the scale tool and scale them in the X and Z direction like so to flare that out. And now let's use our Insert Edge Loop tool under the Mesh Tools, and double click the tool to make sure you have the tool settings correct. I'm going to uncheck this Insert Edge Loop with Edge Flow box. Make sure yours is not checked, and then I'm going to put an edge right in the middle there. And then I'm going to get the scale tool and double click on that edge to select the whole loop. And not holding down Shift, I'm just going to scale that out to sort of round that clock face off like so. And now I do want to check that on my edge loop tool settings. Double click it if you don't have them. I usually dock mine up here with the outliner. Check this box, Insert with Edge Flow, and then click between the top edge and the one we just created, and you can see that that sort of pulls that edge out a little bit and rounds it off quite nicely. Now if yours freaks out and pushes the edge way out or something, adjust this number right here. When I made the one at school, I had to knock this down to 0.05 to get it to work right. So you can try adjusting that if it doesn't work right for you. And now I'm going to uncheck this box and put an edge right in the middle here. And with that edge still selected, I'm going to pull up the face like so. And then I think I'm just going to double click on this edge here and maybe scale that in just a bit like so. Oops, that was a little much. There we go. Now this clock looks really nice, but it could look even better with smoothing. I should have mentioned this at the beginning. We are going to learn about smoothing if you haven't already. So with the mesh object selected, I want you to push 2 on your keyboard, and you can see that that smooths the clock. If you push 3, then you see the smoothed object without the original geometry previewed around it. This one shows you the original boundaries of the geometry, and this one shows it without. Now, this object is not actually smooth. This is what's called smooth preview. To turn it off, you can push 1 on your keyboard. Now, I want you to notice how it collapsed our edge here. I'm going to push 1 so you can see. We had a nice sharp edge here, but it collapsed it when we smoothed it. So we need something called a control loop. And to insert a control loop, I'm going to use the multi-cut tool. And the multi-cut tool is right here. It's a lot like the insert edge loop tool. So click the multi-cut tool, and then hold down Control and hover over these edges so you get a circular edge like that, and get down as close as you can without it going away, like so, and click. And that inserts what's called a control loop that sharpens that edge around the inner side. And then turn off the insert edge loop, the multi-cut tool. And this is fine, but I want you to look at this edge right here. This one. This is the original edge that was in here as well. If I turn off smoothing, you can see it pops back into right here. If I turn it back on, you can see that it pulls out to here. Now we're going to have to deal with that later because that will distort our texture when we put it on there. So now we have a control loop and we can smooth this. And so the next thing we need to do is put create the clock hands. To do that, I'm going to use a plane. So create a plane right here. And then we're going to select it in the outliner and move it up so we can see it above the clock face. And then we need to come over to the attributes editor and find the polyplane node here and make sure that it only has one width and height segment. And now we need to switch to vertex mode. To do that, we need to probably zoom way into this polygon, so that's about all we see, and select vertex. Zoom back out, and then we can highlight or select those vertices and pull them up like so to create our first clock face. Then we can use the scale tool to scale them in and make it pointed. And move it up a little bit more if it needs to move up. And zoom into it again if you need to, and we're going to switch to edge mode. And then we need to double click the outer edge to select the whole thing, get the move tool, hold down shift, and extrude downward. Now we don't need to worry about any polygons on the back of this. And next, we need to align the pivot point with the center of the clock face. So let's switch to wireframe mode by clicking right here. And you can now see the both meshes in wireframe. Hold down D on your keyboard so you can move the pivot point and align that with that center vertex of the clock face, about like so. And now that we've got that done, we can use the rotate tool and make sure that your step snap is turned on. And then we can hold down shift and rotate the next clock hand. But we have a problem here. I don't know exactly what happened there. I was still in edge mode when I rotated that copy, so we need to switch to object mode. And then we can now use the rotate tool, make sure that your tool settings have snap selected, hold down shift and rotate a copy for your small hand. And then we're going to switch to vertex mode. Grab these end vertices. And if your move tool is not aligned to your hand like so, make sure that your move tool settings are set to object and not world. And then we can simply pull that in to make that shorthand. And now let's switch back to shaded mode. Switch to object mode. And then select both hands and pull them down so that they're almost touching the face. And then select the short hand and pull it so that it rests on top of the long hand. Now the next thing we need to do is create a crystal or a cover for the clock face. So we're going to use a sphere to do that. So create a sphere and then pull it up so that it's about halfway out of the clock face, and then we're going to scale it up, but only in the X and Z direction so that it fills the clock face like so. And then we can pull that up a little bit more. You can see what we did to it here. And maybe we scale it up a little bit. And then we can switch to face mode here and select half of these polygons, and we may have to do this in side view. I'm going to turn on my edges here. Switch to face mode. And we're going to push delete on the keyboard to delete all those faces. And then we can switch back to object mode and move that cover down. Switch to perspective view and make sure that it's down in sitting on the face. Now we can't see through this yet because we haven't yet put a clear material on it. And in the next video, what we're going to do is apply materials, and we're going to render this out and make a really nice looking clock. And I'll see you then.